This is the knockout artist, Chris Hero. And if you're looking for some true heel heat, you better listen to them boys.
Hey guys, it's Thunder Rosa and welcome to True Heel Heat.
All right, hello, True Heel Heat. I'm the AEW World Champion MJF. Just in case you're deaf, dumb, blind, stupid, or since you listen to this podcast poor, you're listening to True Heel Heat, and I apologize for that.
Hello. It is me, your True Heel Phenom, SP3. We are live on the True Heel Heat YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for NXT Vengeance Day 2024 preview. And I am joined by a very special guest. You hear her talk about NXT every single Thursday after the show with Alex Pulowski over on the Fightful YouTube channel. She is Mrs. Wrestling YouTube when you really think about it. It is Kate from Fightful.
Hello, how are you, SP3?
I am wonderful. I'm so glad to have you back on the channel. It's been too long. It's only been a few months, but too long.
I know this is like usually you're in Chicago when when I get to come on here, but very excited to talk some NXT with you. I was so flattered by the intro of having Chris Hero, Thunder Rosa, and Max. What a special way to kick off the show. 3 of the faves. So very excited to chop it up with you. You're always the substitute teacher for us at Fightful. You're always killing it when I need someone to call on. I'm very happy to come over to True Heel Heat and talk some NXT.
The crossover that they've always wanted. It's like
That's
the
right.
forbidden
The forbidden door.
It goes both ways. It goes both ways,
Right.
folks.
We're just the Rocky Romeros over here is what we are. We are opening the door to every single channel that we can, you and me. So let's go.
You already know. So I'm glad to have you to talk about NXT Vengeance Day. Glad for everyone who is joining us live. If you're watching us on demand, we appreciate you as well. Show that appreciation back the simplest way possible. Drop the thumbs up on this video. Share this video with all your wrestling fans, friends, and family on all your favorite social media platforms. If you're new to the True Heel Heat YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell to stay notified for all the great content here. We just hit 12,000 subscribers here on the True Heel Heat YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, hit that bell so you always get notified whenever we go live, and sound off in the live chat so we can highlight one of your comments. If you're feeling generous, you want to give back to what we do here, you can send a super chat donation. That is also important to what we do. It always goes back to the contributors that you usually see on screen with us here. But without further ado, let's get into NXT Vengeance Day, Kate, because I want to know how excited, what's your buzz level for this Sunday show, Vengeance Day, the first premium live event for NXT from like 0 to 10?
I'll go with like a 7, but the thing is that 7 is so split because I find the creative in NXT to be like the wild, wild west. You never know what's coming. For me, that's not my preference as a wrestling fan. Like I tend to like things being related to wins and losses. I'm more of a give us booking that is supporting the stars rather than just screen time being a measure of if someone's over, that kind of thing. But the in-ring on these PLEs always shows out. There's some stuff I'm really looking forward to. Dijak and Joe Gacy squeezing in at the last minute is like maybe the match I'm most excited for on this card. That world title picture has been kind of muddy for a little bit, but I think we're going to get a tremendous amount of clarity, and I think the matches are going to be fantastic. So like usual with NXT, I'm very excited for a lot of the in-ring we're going to get. Just some of that booking leaves me with some question marks about some things, but hey, it's a day watching wrestling. I can't complain that much, right?
Another day, right? Another day to watch
Exactly.
wrestling. I always say with NXT, I had this great conversation with my good friend Jimmy Macaram on the channel where I said, yeah, NXT, their backstage segments, their vignettes, their pre-tapes are rough. Like they're just some of the worst acting that I ever seen. And Jimmy trying to defend it, say, well, they're not actors. And I was like, I know, so just wrestle. Like when they wrestle, I like it. Why
And
don't
to
they
be
just do
honest,
that more?
you're a little bit actors. You're on a television show and you have to be able to say lines. So I'm with you. I'm also forgiving in that it's developmental, right? Like this is where you go to learn those things, but it's also the material they're being given that makes me not so hopeful for where some of that stuff is going. Definitely has that after school special kind of feel, which some people love. Like there's 700,000 people that tune in for that, right? So I'm with you. It's not for me. It's really, really rough on the acting side, but the in-ring is great, and usually the PLEs are very in-ring focused. So
Yeah.
definitely the things that I like to watch most out of this product are these PLEs.
Absolutely. We got a couple of people in the chat already. Vala B, who says, I like NXT shows. I always go in blind and come out at least a bit impressed. Yeah, I always find someone new that I'm like, oh, they got much better. Like Deadline was Lash Legend. Lash Legend was the one that was like,
Yes.
she got taken to the next level. I was like, oh, I'm impressed. Let's go.
Coming out party for her. Yeah, that was really cool. That's really cool to see. I don't know if there's a specific match too, but like Trick is now a main eventer, and it didn't feel like that was going to be the case not all that long ago. Lyra certainly had her coming out party against Becky, but on the PLEs especially, we get to kind of see how people get taken to the next level for sure.
Yeah, it was like in the lead up to Heat Wave last year that the Trick push
Yes.
actually started, and that's why I think that the finish to this main event will kind of bring things full circle. I have something interesting that I wanted to tell you. But
All
we
right.
got a couple of more comments here. We got Vala B, we got Chase in the chat saying whoop that Trick. We got Vala B who says Kate's 11th podcast this week. Is that
I don't
accurate?
think quite there, but we're getting there. We're getting close. It's only because I took Wednesday off, but yeah,
I took Wednesday off too. I had gone on like a whole week-long streak of doing something on this channel because of Raw Rumble week, Vince news, and all stuff. So I had like a full week. So I was like, Wednesday, I'm not gonna do anything, and it was
I was
a
like,
day off for me.
if I'm seeing like Jeff Hardy on the same episode as RPT and a bunch of others, like, yeah, it's gonna be not such a pivotal week. I have to be on there for AEW. Was kind of how I felt.
I've been ranting a lot more about AEW as of late, and might be because I see a whole bunch of 50-year-olds on my screen. So
And that is usually what it is for me.
keep sounding off in the live chat. And of course, you can send a super chat donation like our good friend
Hey.
Will Chisholm. Thank you as always, Will. He sends a super chat where he says, I forgive the acting because my grandmother made me and my sister watch old Western, and that acting was was bad, and they got paid millions. They didn't get paid millions. It's an old Western. They got paid thousands.
Which, if you're drawing the comparison to NXT, pretty on par. So well played. But some people love it, and some people say, "Look, it's wrestling. It's cheesy as an art form to begin with." So if that's where you're at, that's awesome. Like, I'm glad that there's something out there for you. It's not the most for me, but I get paid to talk about it, so we talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Will, for the super chat. But let's get into the show, and we'll go right to the matchup that you said you're looking forward to the most. It was the most recent addition to the card. No disqualification. It's going to be Dijak going one-on-one with Joe Gacy. And I literally I was on Beard to Beards last night, between two beards over on
Hell yeah.
Love Wrestling. And I told them, I was like, I can explain this whole rivalry in like one breath. Joe Gacy was an announcer. He got into Dijak's face. Dijak got mad at him. They got into a brawl. They had a match. He got pushed into a wall, and then they brawled the next week all throughout the arena, and then he fell into a dumpster, and they made the match.
Well done. Well done. I'll add a little bit more color to this because this Joe Gacy reboot has been actually a little bit more interesting and one of the best starts he's been off to. Now, I think Joe Gacy's great, and I feel like a lot of the things that have stunted him in NXT have been releases that had nothing to do with him, that were a part of his group. But what I really like about this Joe Gacy thing is, okay, initially me and Alex Pulowski were like, what if he was the only person that could see the parking lot monster like John Locke on Lost? Like, that's where we thought Crazy Joe Gacy was going. There's an NXT parking lot monster. He's the only one that can communicate with it. But instead, it seems like maybe they've gone almost in this mini Cactus Jack direction. And I kind of like that this guy just won't stay down, but he's out of his mind. They went in a very silly direction the past 2 weeks. Dijak is so fun because of the kind of 80s action star vibe that he has. I feel like he can turn up the serious factor whenever he wants, but can also exist in this kind of cheesy world. I was howling at the Oscar the Grouch in it. I was calling it that Joe Gacy did this past week with coming out with ramen noodles in his hair and a coffee filter in his mouth. Just won't stay down. Kind of that Cactus Jack feel, which I think was a fun comparison from my host on Tuesdays, Alex. I'm very much looking forward to this because my complaints with Joe Gacy have never been in ring. In fact, they've been more, can we get him in the ring more? I like seeing Joe Gacy wrestle. I think Dijak's going to be a really fun dance partner. I feel like Dijak gets the win here because I feel like the Cactus Jack type character doesn't necessarily need the W's. And I also don't think this is the end of this.
I didn't think about that it could be kind of the start of this whole rivalry. I will give NXT a bunch of credit for using Dijak in these non-title feuds for over a year now. Like, he hasn't really been, like, he had the title match against Wesley at last year's Vengeance Day, but he's had great matches since then in matches that had nothing to do with titles, really, or it was like number one contenders, whether it be him and Dragunov at Battleground or the Deadline Iron Survivor matchup. So Dijak has been able to be a player in NXT and a major player. I want to see more for him because I've always been a fan of Dijak since his days in Ring of Honor and the independent scene. But I don't know. I kind of have a feeling Joe Gacy is going to win this one.
You
I
think
feel
Joe
like
Gacy's going to ratio him? Is that what you think?
I mean, I've rooted for Dijak on many of occasions on these premium live events, and he always loses. So that's why I think that's the other part of me in my head that's like, no, you've done this before. Don't do it again. Pick Joe Gacy. So I'm going to go with Joe Gacy.
I respect it. I mostly am going with Dijak here too, because I feel like this is a big establishing pay-per-view for Joe Gacy. So I think the more interesting thing is for this type of character not to win, and then you have to see what way they pivot. And I do think we're going to get a return shot at some point. But I'm with you. They break my heart with Dijak a lot, but this is kind of the role he plays in NXT, and he's excellent at it, being that talent for people to have breakout matches against and establish themselves against, or you get something incredible like we saw with him and Dragunov when you have someone that is a little bit more established. So agree with you. I feel like Dijak is not only underrated as a wrestler, but a vital part into what NXT is trying to build right now.
100%. Another big part of that is the current NXT Tag Team Champions, the family, Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo. They'll be teaming up with the Riz. I stopped trying to care about her full name. I just call her the Riz. What's her full name again?
Well, now it's Adriana Rizzo.
Yeah, I know it was something different.
As Big Ange, and she'll forever be Big Ange to me and to our Tuesday night show because she's unbelievable. She just is. She just is Big Ange.
She gets the whole gimmick a lot faster than Tony D and Stacks did. I'm sorry. Like, I love the Riz. The Riz will be
she's amazing
with Tony D and Stacks versus OTM out the mud. What do you think about this rivalry, this kind of the OTM recruiting Jada Parker to deal with the Riz and attacking the Tony D's restaurant? And now it all sets up this huge 6-person tag team matchup at Vengeance Day. What have you thought about the rivalry? What have you thought about OTM's improvement since their start?
I love what they've added as well. I think both of the women in both pictures are actually doing just an incredible job. Very charismatic, making things feel grounded when they get a little bit out of control. I'm a little split on this one, honestly. I feel like Tony D and the family might retain here. I feel like I actually feel like it's kind of time for them to drop the titles, but I don't know if Out the Mud is there yet. I think the W
But
for Out the
I
Mud
think
on
this
this.
is a 6-person tag. I thought it was a 6-person, not a
Oh
title
my
match.
gosh, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. I actually thank you for reminding me of that because that actually very much affects my thinking here. I'm very glad you pointed that out. I'm pretty sure Out the Mud gets the win so that we can get to probably some more proper tag action off of this. So you let them get the win here and then a proper challenge for those titles coming. Thank you very much. My brain is very much in the mud this morning, I guess. I am not, not
It's
fully
Out
there.
the Mud now. OTM.
Oh man. So you know what, that actually, as we're talking through, that makes a ton of sense. I think Out the Mud getting a big pay-per-view win kind of gives them the credibility to go after those titles a little bit more authority and to kind of keep this rivalry going. And I think it's going to be fun. I think this could kind of go either way, but realizing that this is a 6-person, thank you very much, does make it feel like it's set up to kind of set up the inevitable title shot a little bit later.
Yeah, honestly, I think I would be more interested in this matchup if it was just the Riz versus Jada Parker.
Right?
Like their most interesting thing about this matchup. There was nothing about OTM versus the family for the tag team titles on that episode of NXT that made me want to see this matchup. But the interactions and the brawling with Jada Parker and the Riz have made it a little bit more interesting, have gotten more legs out of this rivalry than I thought it was going to get. So I think this is going to be a good performance for the Riz, but I think that Jada Parker is going to get the win here for OTM.
I think she's got to, and excuse my vacation brain. Sorry about that. But I will also say, like, part of the thing with Tony D is he needs to have more robust of a family for the gimmick to work. I really think Tony D is actually really good. Stacks is there to do what he's there to do. Big Ange is a star. I love her so much. She'll forever be Big Ange to me. But like the fact that Luca Crucifino is not in this picture drives me crazy. And I just feel like if you're the family, you need more members. Like the best the D'Angelo family ever was, I felt like was in that feud against Legato a couple years ago because it was so robust and everything was evenly matched. So my hope is that they tend to bring in more people to this. It's just kind of hard to do that with tag titles. They've kind of booked themselves into something a little bit odd here.
You basically have the same complaint me and Jimmy have about Blackpool Combat Club. Blackpool Combat Club, I made the comparison. It's like the X-Men if Dr. Xavier just recruited Cyclops and stopped. The whole point of Blackpool Combat Club was we're training the future. We're gonna get Wheeler Yuta. We're gonna get Danny Garcia. We're gonna get Lee Moriarty, and they just stopped at Wheeler Yuta.
I don't know. I think Danny Garcia might end up heading over there because he tends to lose when he's alone. He tends to lose when he's with Jericho, and he tends to lose when he's with FTR. So I think he might find his way in there. Wheeler and Danny Garcia should have like a decades-long rivalry, but agreed with you. If you're a stable, be a stable. If you're a family, you gotta be a family here, right? So I mean, if Adriana has any siblings, they should absolutely be in this. She is like a moth to flame with this.
With the rest of the Rizzos over here.
That's right.
Call Rizzo. Someone who's been making a big impact on NXT since his arrival is the NXT Men's Breakout Tournament winner, Oba Femi, the new NXT North American champion. He cashed in his contract on Dragon Lee after he picked up a victory over Alexis King on an episode of NXT. Dragon Lee has tried to convince Oba Femi to give him this opportunity, and Oba was convinced after Dragon Lee picked up a win over Scripps. I don't know why that was so convincing, but each its own. I think this is going to be a nice little clash in styles. The little taste that we got of this when he cashed in the contract was pretty good. I think this is going to be probably definitely Oba Femi's best match to date, and I'm a bit of an Oba feminist, so I'm going with Oba Femi.
Me too, in a major way, an Oba feminist. For context, if you don't watch the show I do on Tuesdays, it's called Sour Graps, and the slogan is "Everything Sucks." And I was almost paralyzed with fear because Alex is so excited about Oba Femi, and he doesn't like anybody or anything. He is so excited about Oba Femi, so am I. This guy is just a star, and one thing I appreciate is that it feels like they recognize that they don't always strike while the iron's hot in NXT because the iron is a chameleon little iron. I don't know. The metaphor ends there, but like so much is going on at NXT and everything's changing all the time. But it's really, really cool that they had put this guy on TV about a year ago. I think they might have realized they had something special and pulled him off and said, let's make sure that he's ready. Because we all thought he was cool in his debut and we're like, he shot putting couches. Literally, where did this guy go? We want more of him. They did the work to make sure he was ready for this moment. I think Dragon Lee is just one of the best that you could put anybody in a ring with. That guy could probably make an amoeba look good at this point. But Oba Femi, absolutely fantastic. A super awesome rise through the tournament. I was nervous they weren't going to have him win because of what they were doing with Riley Osborne, but this ended up being really, really great. I think he retains here, and I think there is an absolute future star in our hands. On Tuesday nights, we're rooting for him to have all the golds, women's title, dethrone Roman, do whatever you got to do. We are Oba feminists, full throttle for the 25-year-old Oba Femi.
I've been hearing about that on social media, that there's some debate over his age because he once said that he was 22 and his mom said he's 25. So
I mean, if you might be one of the few that can stick with me on this reference because we're in a similar age bracket. I said it was a Danny Almonte situation. Do you remember the Danny Almonte scandal? There's like 6 people that get it, and I was like, SP3 is going to be one of them. Very Danny Almonte. If you don't know, Google the Little League scandal that was Danny Almonte.
Man, when there was Little League scandals, when we used to pay attention to stuff like that, the good old days.
My God.
We got another super chat donation here from Will Chisholm. Thank you so much, Will. He says, I usually don't like the NXT crowd, but I love how the fans turn Oba into Black Panther. he does. I mean, he is royalty where he's from, so he does hold himself, and he comes across, his whole presentation is like a prince, like a king. So I do like that about Oba Femi, and I do love the crowd doing the war chant, every time he says a sentence.
It's pretty great, and the thing with crowds that are consistent, like the NXT crowd, especially for, I don't want to say lower stakes brands, but kind of like lower stakes brands, developmental brands, ones that aren't having the tenacity that like an AEW or a SmackDown and Raw have. They can get very in on themselves, and that gets really annoying when they get in on things like ironically, but it's also really fun when they do stuff like this. Like there's a double-edged sword with those repeat crowds, but this has been really, really fun. They've been doing all of the chants and everything. It's been really cool, and he deserves the support. He's, I think, going to be as good as we were hoping. What struck me in the first dalliance with Dragon Lee especially was how great he had picked up on selling already. Like he made Dragon Lee look really good in certain moments, and we're that big against a guy of that size and style. That doesn't always come the most natural. That's probably the weirdest part of wrestling. So it was really encouraging to see little things like that in those early interactions.
And I really feel like the whole push that he's getting feels very reminiscent to Braun Breaker. It feels like he's going to be the replacement for Braun to be the new marquee powerhouse of NXT.
Yeah, I'm in on that entirely. And what's funny is I think people are starting to realize it now because he was on the main roster, but Braun Breaker's not that tall. He's big and he's explosive, but he's not the tallest dude in the world. I think Oba Femi has a like 4 or 5 inches of height on him. So I think he's going to be even more convincing, and Braun is pretty damn good already. So looking forward to get what we're going to get at Oba Femi here.
When you said something about like NXT crowds kind of getting on themselves and getting into something, one thing that did annoy me was how they used to boo Roxanne Perez. But we've gotten past that, and we could talk about their next matchup for the NXT Women's Championship, as it's going to be Lyra Valkyria defending against former NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez. Roxanne won a battle royal that turned into a fatal 4-way to earn this opportunity, and this has been a rivalry or a feud that has been built on respect. But also you have the stalker of Tatum Paxley, who has been stalking our NXT Women's Champion, who put Roxanne through a table, who Roxanne beat on this past week's NXT, and even attacked after the match when she went to attack her. So we don't know if she's going to play a factor in this matchup, but presuming by the build she will. Who do you think's going to win? What have you thought about the build up to this matchup? Where, I mean, we can all be honest here. This was not the planned matchup. It was supposed to be Cora Jade.
Correct. Yes, it was very obvious and unfortunate that Cora Jade just returned and is now injured. Definitely felt like it was heading in that direction. And with Tatum Paxley, I feel like the Shawn Michaels booking here is going to be the thing that drives me nuts on this PLE, because it feels like Lyra is going to retain, probably with some interference from Tatum Paxley that she didn't even want or request. And I have a feeling this is going to be how they turn Roxanne heel or how they send her off to the main roster kind of more appropriately. I hope she goes up to the main roster. I thought the interactions with her and Tiffany and Rumble were really fun with the Toodles elimination. I'm rooting for both of them to go up because there's not a lot left for them to accomplish, especially if they're not going to be champions. But I think Lyra retains on the back of Tatum Paxley. I don't think Lyra wants that because she's an honorable champion, but I think that's where this heads in what will be a great match up until the last 30 seconds, just to drive me crazy personally. That's what they will do.
It's gonna be a great match, and then they're gonna mess it all up with the booking. Is this leading to Tatum Paxley versus Lyra Valkyria at Stand and Deliver? Because that doesn't feel like a Stand and Deliver matchup to me.
No, I'm wondering if this leads to more. Well, I guess it would probably more likely be heel, but we still have Lola Vice to go, right? With the
Yes, that's true.
yeah, I call
think
it the
she
at a
made
glance
it.
session because it's like a portfolio. I don't know why it's like an at a glance planner, but she's looked really, really good. She has the same spinning heel kick that I think she actually executes a little bit better than Lyra. So I'm looking forward to what that might end up being. But that feels like, unless they're going to do a huge arrival of someone showing up. Camille was rumored, but then it seemed like she didn't sign. Like, unless somebody's coming in for that level of not going right to the main roster, but feels like a big signing, I think maybe we lead to Lola Vice in that.
Yeah, I would think by the booking, it would be either Lola Vice either cashing in her contract at Stand and Deliver, or just like outright saying she's gonna do that at Stand and Deliver, and that's the matchup that you build to.
Yeah, I think that could be really fun. And she's one of the kind of rookie of the year contenders in this fold of the NXT women's division, who, while I don't love a lot of the booking, it's undeniable that they get a ton of screen time and a ton of room to discover how to be themselves. And it pays off. You're getting stars on the women's side of things over and over and over again. So she's definitely in that conversation. She deserves to be. They're also, I don't know when Sol Ruka's expected back, but she was so over when she got injured. I wonder if maybe that's somewhere they had. But Lyra and Sol kind of feel like too similar on the way that they're over and the way that they're faces to create a really cool rivalry out of that. So Lola Vice really kicking butt in this heel role. I think that might be the way to go.
And you also have to see, because what I've seen is that when you have the long layoff and the injuries with NXT, it doesn't always feel like they're quite as over. You don't get that energy like you do on the main roster when somebody comes back and they feel so renewed and fresh. Like Nikita Lyons is the best example of that. She's come back and it's pretty obvious she's not as over as she was before she left. So I fear that might happen with Sol Ruka, because we've also seen that before with Zoe Stark. Go back to Zoe Stark in like 2 years ago when she came back from injury. She wasn't quite as over as she was before she had the injury. Like, it seems to happen a lot in this new era of the developmental NXT.
I think part of that might be because the product changes so swiftly and because it's so swervy and unpredictable. They're not usually coming back for the person that injured them a year ago, and that person has had a steady rise or anything like that. Nikita Lyons, too, you could argue was over for certain things that maybe don't have the staying power. I think when Sol Ruka hits that finisher again, she's going to be right back. And she also just has that very magnetic appeal that almost like a Willow Nightingale or something has, like that very calm, happy, authoritative. I guess Willow's much more exuberant, but that same thing where you just want to root for them, like you want to be behind them for sure. I feel like Sol Ruka has that.
Sol Ruka always reminded me of like a female Rob Van Dam. Like what made Rob Van Dam
that comparison. I love that.
Yeah, like the innovative style in the ring, and then she just comes off as cool. Like something that probably 35-year-old me, if I watched RVD in like the 90s, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty lame. You're just like this stereotype pothead. But like to the 2024,
she's a surfer. Maybe
looks
there's a little bit of like a 420 connection. Yeah,
you know, she could be 420 friendly. You know, it's like Surfer Sting meets RVD kind of thing.
I love it. I love it. I love
gotta-
that comparison. That's a really apt one. And I feel like the way she was over is a little different than the ways that Zoe and Nikita were over. And I'm hoping that'll pay off for her because she was really, really on an upward trajectory, and that injury came at an unfortunate time.
It seems
Not that there's like an awesome time to get injured,
yeah,
but,
but
but like on her ascent for sure.
Right, lately for WWE, it's been coming at very unfortunate times.
Yeah.
My we
goodness.
got another super chat donation here from, of course, Will Chisholm. Thank you so much, Will. He says, I used to say I could see Bayley as a heel, and she turned me around. I want to see Roxanne as a heel, but she sounds too nice, like she's cutting a 2006 Disney promo. Yeah, I honestly have been saying, because it's felt like they've been teasing a Roxanne heel turn for like months, ever since she it wasn't really the fans turned on her. The fans just got sick of the cookie cutter kind of white meat baby face, especially after she lost the title due to anxiety. So like that was it. I think that was it for the fans, and that's why they started booing her. But
a great message to send is mental health makes you a loser. That's essentially what they did with Roxanne. But I agree with this, chat. I think maybe you were trying to say the opposite about Bayley, that you couldn't see her as a heel, and she turned you around with both the clever heel work she's done and damage control and the ding dong hello stuff. She carried the product as a heel. Roxanne turning heel is interesting to me because I haven't seen it before. I agree with you that her promos sound a little bit 2006 Disney is a fair thing, but it's also what they've given her. She lost the title. She never actually lost it. Sounded good, I felt like, in the go home last week. But I feel like she hasn't really had the opportunity. She had the flair with Blair Davenport that was cool, but did not feel important enough on the product. So it's also a matter of what you're given in certain respects. And it's interesting to see what they'll do with her, because if she loses and doesn't turn heel, I think our girl Bayley is going to need some help on the main roster soon. And I feel like not only is that who she made her main roster debut against, there's a lot of fun that could be had between Bayley and Roxanne.
Bayley can see a little bit of herself in Roxanne, and Bayley loves recruiting the NXT talent, like she said in that promo before Royal Rumble. We got another super chat donation here from Will Chisholm. Thank you so much, Will. He says she needs to talk to Randy about that finisher. Look how my back is now. To be fair.
Well, no notes. No notes. It's not wrong. I can't argue with it.
4-star super chat. No notes.
That's right. 7 in the Tokyo Dome. Really.
Crazy World says, was Roxy a heel in ROH? No, she was white meat babyface as can be. You know, she's the young up and comer. You know, you rally behind her, the underdog babyface. I just think that NXT has kind of lost the plot with that, or want to be creative and come up with a different story, and they kind of lost the plot on what her character really is at its essence.
You know, they have her dubbed as the Prodigy, and I wish they had gone in that direction, because as a face, you could just be a prodigy that's going out there with something to prove. As a heel, you could just be cocky as hell because you're the Prodigy, right? So
yeah,
that felt like such an organic launching point, and they've really kind of lost the plot with her, as you said. In ROH, I remember being at the finalist of Final Battles, and it was kind of split between her and Willow Nightingale. If you want to talk about two of the biggest baby faces in women's wrestling, justified both these girls' chance for that match. There was like a really fun split in that, and that they both were people that you just wanted to cheer so much for. So was very much a baby face, as I feel like is more her wheelhouse. But I think something they do in NXT is try to test you on both sides of things. We saw that with Carmella. We saw that with Braun, right? I thought Braun was great as a face. This heel version is way better with his moveset.
Yeah.
So from the developmental aspect, it makes sense to kind of try on both worlds, I think.
Yeah, and you're able to show a lot more humor and depth on your promos as a heel, because you see that with Braun. He's a lot more comfortable talking as a heel than he ever was as a babyface. But I'm going to go with Lyra to retain here. You agree?
Yes, big time.
There we go. And now the final two matches, I want to save it because it is going to be the book ended by one man, Trick Williams, because probably the opener to the show will be the men's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic Finals as the Wolf Dogs. Braun Breaker and Baron Corbin will go up against the Trick Mello Gang, Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes. These men have put on some really good performances in this tournament so far. Trick and Mello had to defeat LWO on this past Tuesday's edition of NXT to earn the opportunity for the finals, while the Wolf Dogs defeated Axiom and Nathan Frazier in a great matchup in the tournament semifinals. This is for the biggest stars in NXT right now. What have you thought about the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic and these two pairings, and who do you think wins?
I'm going to sound like a cranky old lady on this, okay? I like when the Dusty Classic is used for real tag teams, and we got two situations of people that were thrown together, and two situations that the bigger issue is I feel like might feel kind of handicapped from where you go from here with the Dusty, because it certainly feels like Carmelo is main roster bound and that Trick might also go up. Definitely feels like from what we saw in Royal Rumble and following, that Braun Breaker is main roster bound. So you're also now leading to another situation where the winners are going to probably split off, or maybe they get pulled up to the main roster with their tag team partner. Now, I feel like either situation, that's not great. It should probably go to a tag team that's going to be sticking around NXT. It's frustrating that they tend to water down the significance of the Dusty. A couple years ago at Stand and Deliver, we saw the tag team winners cash in on individual winners, which was really awful. Like, just defeated the whole purpose of tag team wrestling. Bad. Oh man, brutal stuff. So I don't feel like either winner is a great call. Now, it does feel like maybe they're setting this up to affect the main event. Maybe Trick takes the pin and Carmelo gets pissed and beats on him and softens him up before the main event to help Ilja retain. I'm not sure where that goes. But they do seem to have abandoned the "we were attacked backstage" story, and I feel like that might have gotten a little bit convoluted with the main roster stuff, because it feels like Carmelo's a face on the main roster, so I don't think you want him working heel in NXT unless they've completely abandoned that. Or, maybe it's somebody completely out of nowhere. Maybe it was Dijak. Maybe it actually was Lexus King in a weird whatever the hell that guy's doing type thing. I have no idea what's going on with that guy. He's got a slidey throne chair. I'm very confused. But I do think they've kind of handcuffed themselves, and I don't know if it's just poor planning or if it is, maybe with Brock not being incorporated into plans, they do want to call Braun up sooner. Like there's all these things that I feel like on the main roster might be affecting where this was initially supposed to go. I'm going to go with my booking of Ilja retains because Trick was softened up by what happened in this Dusty, and I'm going to say it's the Wolf Dogs. I always want to say War Dogs. The Wolf Dogs that get the W here because I think it makes the main event a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I think that the main event becomes very more interesting with the result of this matchup here. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with the Wolf Dogs. And yes, the Wolf Dogs is a great name. I don't care what anybody says. It's a great name.
War Dogs running wild in New Japan. That's rough. That is rough. But I appreciate that it comes from like the Lone Wolf thing and obviously the Steiner thing. So like it at least comes from somewhere. But I was like, really?
No,
Wolf Dogs win the War Dogs.
They sold me on it. They sold me on it with the backstage segments.
Look, I don't think
has been
superb.
Been great.
It's been great. And I will say, I don't think NXT and New Japan have the biggest crossover fan base in wrestling. They're probably the furthest apart of anything, but still, I was like, yeah, that's tough because Gabe Kidd's just running roughshod right now. But all right.
What are you talking about, Kate? I would have sworn I saw a whole bunch of WWE fans on my timeline. They know exactly who Kazuchika Okada is.
The big NXT signing coming in.
They're so ready for him.
Of
course, the night's going to end with Okada coming out. The rain's going to to fall. And he's gonna come out.
You're going to hear the coin drop against Ilja. That match would fucking rule.
It would slap. It would slap.
Ilja versus Okada is like the thing you could sell me on in that promotion.
Literally, that was the thing. That was the big one up by the NXT fans. Like, wait. You say it's bad that Okada's coming to NXT, but what about Ilja Dragunov?
That's cheating. You can't use Ilja. That's cheating. He's great against everybody.
Exactly. I was like, yeah, that would be a great match. It should be on the main roster.
Yeah.
My response.
Yeah.
That was my response to them. But yeah, I think the Wolf Dogs, I think this is shown a lot for Braun Breaker as far as showing his charisma, and for Baron Corbin as far as like showing that he could potentially even be a baby face with this. Like he showed it when he was bum ass Corbin, but I think that the chemistry that he has with Braun Breaker, you could see it getting over if they paired them up like a long-term thing, and it will get over with the fans, and you can eventually have something that 5 years ago I thought I would never say, a successful Baron Corbin babyface run.
Yeah, it shows you how much that is not on the back of the heels of Baron Corbin. It was on the back of the heels of some real bad creative, I think, that he was dealt. But this has been surprisingly a really fun and really refreshing duo. Both backstage, they made stuff work, and in the ring, it's been great. Baron Corbin as a hot tag, I don't know if you're going to find a more fun one in wrestling right now with what he's able to do with that spear, how explosive his offense is. And when you pair that with Baron Corbin having the deep six and a bunch of really fun supplementary offense into what Braun does, it's a really, really fun duo. Them starting as hating each other, but odd coupling it to the finals has actually worked, much to... They use that trope a lot, and it doesn't always work. They made it work, and I'm in on it. I wouldn't hate them going to the main roster as a duo. I think that could be fun. But we will see what happens there. I think that they do win the NXT titles, though. It just feels weird with the D'Angelo family right now.
Yeah, it does. I just feel that even if Braun Breaker is called up now, it's going to be CM Punk returning at Survivor Series, when I literally was on this channel and I told everybody, and I was proven right. I was like, CM Punk's not going to wrestle a damn match until the Royal Rumble. So he probably should have came back in the Royal Rumble.
My Tuesday co-host said, wouldn't it be funny if CM Punk didn't wrestle anybody until Royal Rumble? And then that's exactly what they did. And injuries are never funny, but the irony of the circumstances that they designed this whole plan to keep this exact thing from happening is heartbreaking. But it's also ironic. Like
it's also a benefit to them because they don't have to think of anything. They just did 3 promos with Punk. They did him and Seth, him and Drew, him and Cody, and they spread that across like 6 weeks. That was great booking. That was great delaying of time. And I think even if Braun Breaker gets called up to SmackDown, he can still be on NXT to the build up to Stand and Deliver, and they can have their matchup, the Wolf Dogs versus the family at Stand and Deliver, which honestly I would say the Wolf Dogs should win that, because like we keep saying, like, it's so weird having the family as champions when really like they don't really feel like a family one, and they don't really feel like a tag team, like a genuine tag. Despite them being together so long, I don't really ever have viewed them as a tag team.
Well, what's tricky too is if you're doing a mob boss thing, like I feels like he should have a singles title more than a tag title, because he should be puppeting the guys below him. So them as a tag team hasn't really felt like the move for a stable like they're telling us the story is behind. They also just don't defend him enough. And when Chase U won, I was like, not everything in Chase U has been for me. I love Duke Hudson. I feel like that guy should be in the ring way more than he is. I think he's a superstar. They're out here tweeting that Von Wagner is gargantuan. Duke Hudson's an inch taller than Von Wagner. That guy is like everything that they want in a wrestler, but they don't give him the creative to back it up. And when they lost him back, it really felt like the Chase U debt that was owed was going to be to these guys. Like it was going to be, I'm in debt to this mob family. I don't want to die. How do we get out of debt? It's such a fun way to go. And then they just kind of seem to have abandoned that. So I felt like that story would have cemented them as tag champions proper, because that felt like we figured out how to make these two weird universes that we created exist for a really fun rivalry, and one that could also lean into the kind of cheekier nature of how they go about stuff. So really disappointing that they didn't see that story through, because I thought that would have actually been really fun. But yeah, I would be for the Wolf Dogs beating Feeding the family at Stand and Deliver for those. That would work for me.
Wolf dogs. So
I always want to say war dogs.
We do have another super chat donation from our good friend Will Chisholm. Thank you so much, Will, once again. He says, the only way I see Roxanne as a heel, and I think they teasing with her saying she's the best wrestler in the locker room. To be fair, tell her when she's telling lies.
That's what I was kind of hoping for with the Prodigy thing. Like, there's a very, very easy way to flip that heel and a very, very easy way to keep that face. It's just a couple of adjustments and how that wrestler sees the world that they're in a little bit. So I'm with you, Will. If they were going to turn her heel, I think that would have been the way to do it. But now it feels like she simply has to wear black lipstick and find the darkness within her, because that's what we do in NXT.
and be a little snappy on the mic. Be a little
That's
snappy.
right.
Well, with another super chat donation, he says, I think Mello takes the pin and he turned on Trick in the main event. I do think Mello's going to take the pin in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic matchup.
Okay. I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I don't hate that.
All right, so finally, it's the main event. Ilja Dragunov defending the NXT Championship against the number one contender, Trick Williams. Trick earned this opportunity by winning the Iron Survivor matchup at Deadline. A remarkable performance by Trick Williams, the best performance of his career so far. He has been going from strength to strength. His popularity is through the roof. There's even reports, Kate, that people are seeing him as a WrestleMania potential main eventer, and he main events his first premium live event here against Ilja Dragunov, the workhorse, the number one, the best in-ring worker in NXT. Who do you think wins this one?
Oh, my dramatic king, Ilja Dragunov. I love him so much. This is interesting because this does feel like it can go either way. And unfortunately, I don't feel like that's been on the back of the story that I'm drawing that conclusion. It just feels like they could do Ilja Dragunov versus Gunther if they wanted at any point in time, or they could call Trick up with Mello. So kind of the real world circumstances coming into play. I think they want to give Ilja maybe a little bit more of like a proper run, because so much of Ilja's run has been actually bogged down in this story. He really hasn't had any defenses outside of these two guys that have had any massive impact or significance. So it just gut instinct tells me Ilja is going to retain and they're going to keep this going. I also think for Trick and Mello to either properly break up or even to properly get together, you actually kind of need a loss here. So I'm going to go with Ilja, but I wouldn't be astonished if Trick won. Like, it wouldn't throw me that far off, because you could have Carmelo just being jealous of him, them having a blow off and Carmelo going up to the main roster. But Ilja just being such a safe bet with everybody that's in that ring, and Trick making massive improvements, but still being a little bit newer at this. I'm going to go with Ilja here, but they could swerve us. Wouldn't be totally surprised by that, because I'm never surprised by a swerve on NXT because it's NXT. So
yeah, I'm never totally surprised, but I will say if Trick Williams did win here, it would be the equivalent of all those years ago, not too many years ago, I think it was 8 years ago, when Bayley won the Raw Women's Championship in February, like before WrestleMania, against Charlotte Flair, and then defended it at WrestleMania in a 5-way, and everybody was sitting there like, why didn't Bayley just win it here? It's like, yeah, if you're that close to WrestleMania weekend and you have a babyface, an underdog babyface that the fans are behind, you should probably get it done at WrestleMania. You shouldn't get it done just before WrestleMania. So that is why most of all I am going with Ilja Dragunov here, because this whole main event story is about Trick Williams' rise to the top and him finally getting there. But also, the whole story goes back to Great American Bash 2023, the first Ilja Dragunov versus Carmelo Hayes matchup, and the finish to that matchup where Trick Williams grabbed the NXT Championship to motivate Carmelo. Carmelo goes to the outside. Ilja comes off the steps with the torpedo. Mello moves, he runs right into the belt, and that cost Ilja Dragunov that first opportunity at the NXT Championship. I think that we get a callback to that, but instead it is Trick running into the title that Carmelo picked up to motivate Trick, and he cost Trick the championship matchup. Dragunov wins. Then after the match, Mello comes in. He blasts Dragunov with the title. Trick gets in his face, like, what are you doing? Like he's been doing over the last couple of weeks. He checks on Dragunov, and then he turns around to Melo, blasting him with the title. And we end the show with Melo holding up the title, and that sets up a triple threat for Stand and Deliver. Trick, Melo, and Dragunov, and then Trick's moments there.
I love that booking. It feels like they want to yank Melo up faster than that. So I'm intrigued if they can follow through with it, but it would be a really nice culmination.
He is going to be Dragon Lee. I swear to you. I see it already. He will be Dragon Lee, where they will have him on SmackDown for a few, and he'll have random matches with Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, because that's all he's really done so far. And he will be back on NXT. He will be on both shows until after WrestleMania. I feel like anyone called up at this point, they're going to be floating.
You are right, and that's going to drive me crazy.
It does piss me off too, because I was so mad. You know what pissed me off about that is when Melo came out in the Rumble, and he came out to near silence because they messed up his pop by putting it on SmackDown for weeks.
It also, we got a different show for a different side, but like the themes, man, we gotta do better, because half of those Royal Rumble pops were because of the extremely generic music. But you're right, they kind of took the magic out of who from NXT is going to be in there. Braun's pop was bigger than Melo's, and I think that's a big part of why is you kind of let the air out of the balloon a little bit. And I don't love to hate on Austin Theory, but also I do. Like, I don't think it's his fault, but it's just a vacuum right now. Like it really is. They were doing some good stuff with him and Grayson Waller, but it feels like Grayson Waller is just, if they're on a track, he's lapping him at this point. And so to then just throw your hottest NXT star into Grayson Waller's little brother, like, doesn't feel like a good way to debut someone. So I agree with you, but as long as they're consistent with who they are as a heel and a face, and I was encouraged to see that Trick was also on the main roster and that they're following through with stories. Like, I just like continuity. I can get around how frustrated I am about non-split rosters if you keep things going across all three brands.
Absolutely. So it seems like we're on the same page for most of these matches for NXT Vengeance Day this Sunday, live on Peacock, live on WWE Network, depending on where you're at. But thank you so much, Kate. I just love talking any wrestling promotion, but especially NXT, because I know you have to struggle through that sometimes on a Tuesday. So to see you on a Friday talking glowingly about NXT is always a pleasant sight. Kate, the floor is yours. Let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and what you got going on, Fightful and everywhere else, and your own YouTube channel as well.
Sure. This is how you know I love SP3 so much, because if I'm going to be talking about NXT more than I do, okay, it's going to only be with someone like SP3. But you can follow me at Miss Kate Babe on social media. You can also follow my YouTube channel, which is at Miss Kate Babe. I'm coming back this month. I took January off because I was sick and on vacation and needed a breather because I got a lot going on. But please support me over there if you would be so kind. I do some interview content. I'm doing a Wrestling Around the World series that is coming out, and This Week in Wrestling, which is just kind of an overview show. And you can catch me on Fightful, Mondays on Fightful Select, Tuesdays covering NXT, Sour Graps. We are extremely silly over there. It's more of a variety hour than a review show. Wednesdays at the Mark Order Podcast, and Thursdays and Fridays on the main doing ROH and SmackDown respectively. And of course, post shows on the main for NXT, but on Fightful Select as an alternative to what's on the main channel as well.
Look at that. The most busiest woman, one of the most busiest women in all of wrestling YouTube. Kate, you're one of my favorites as well.
You're one of my favorites.
Thank you.
Proof is in the pudding. If I'm talking more NXT, because of this guy. It's the only guy.
Follow me on the Twitter machine at TrueHillSP3. Follow the gang, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at True Hill Heat. I'll be back tomorrow, 11:05 a.m. Eastern Time. The True Hill Heat flagship podcast. Myself, Miss Chrissy Love, and True Draw Josh talking about This Week in Wrestling with Triple H's response to the Vince McMahon lawsuit, as well as Vince McMahon now under federal criminal investigation. So,
jeez.
got more Vince McMahon to talk about. So I'll see you for that. Check out the great content we got on the channel right now, like AE Ramble 131 with me and Jimmy talking AEW Dynamite and Total Nonstop Blunts #2, a TNB, as the fellas watched TNA Impact last night. So check that out as well. But for Kate, it is me, your True Hill Phenom, SP3. This has been our NXT Vengeance Day 2024 preview. We are signing off until next time.